we're going to cross over to Pittsburgh and welcome author and human rights lawyer Daniel Kovalik to this part of the program. Thanks so much for being with us, Daniel. Your thoughts on what is currently taking place in Syria?
Yeah, well, I'm very troubled. First of all, I've been to Malula twice. It is a historic Christian city. It's the last city in the world that speaks Aramaic, the language of Jesus Christ. As you said, back in 2013, the militants, supported by the United States, at that time called the Free Syrian Army, they change names all the time, kidnapped nuns, tried to burn the churches to the ground, burnt the forest to the ground. And as you said, the Syrian army ended up driving them out along with Hezbollah. And now they're back. And so the fear is, of course, that they're going to do the same thing they did last time. And there's a lot of reasons to believe that. Throughout Syria right now, there seems to be attacks against minority groups like Christians, Alawites, Druze, and Shia as well. By the way, I just got back from Lebanon, where at least over 100,000 Shia have fled to Lebanon since the HTS, or as I like to call them, Al-Qaeda, came to power because of persecution. So I think what you're seeing is that this group is doing what they've always done, and that is persecuting these minority groups.
Right. I mean, Daniel, let's talk about the irony of it all, because we have, for example, U.S. officials and perhaps many Americans who at least say that they are Christian, applauding this terrorist group and taking over the Syrian government, where, as we have just seen and been seeing the last few days, of Christians really being persecuted for their religious beliefs, whereas under the Assad government, or even when we saw with Hezbollah, they help liberate the Christians, and the Christians live freely. I mean, your thoughts on that side of things?
Well, it's an incredible irony, isn't it? I mean, the West claims to be, especially the United States, claims to be a Christian country. The West claims to be basically Christian and to defend Christianity, but they're destroying Christianity throughout the Holy Land. Not only in Syria, but in Gaza, of course. Israel, backed by the United States, heavily backed by the United States, has bombed and destroyed ancient churches. Israel has also been persecuting Christians in the West Bank and Jerusalem for a long time. And 80%, in fact, 80% of Christians have been driven out of both Iraq and Syria since the U.S. began its so-called war on terror, really a war of terror, since 9/11. So yeah, it is this really strange thing where you have the Christian world, allegedly Christian world, destroying Christianity in the place where Christianity was born. In fact, the Archbishop of Aleppo said Christianity is dead in Aleppo, or will die in Aleppo. The same fear is for the valley of the Christians, they call it, in Syria, where St. Peter and St. Paul did their work and preached. So it's a disastrous situation at Christmas time. And I mean, sadly, I think most people in the West just don't know what's happening. If they did, I would think they would be appalled.
What will it take actually for them to know? You said if you think that if they knew they would be appalled. We have, as you've talked about, churches that have been destroyed in Gaza. We have in Bethlehem, of course, the birthplace of Jesus Christ, where more and more Palestinians are being killed and incarcerated every day. And of course, the Lutheran church there said basically they would not be celebrating Christmas. Again, Jesus is under the rubble, symbolically. And now we have these terrorists actually attacking Christians in some of the oldest towns, Christian towns in the world. So what does it take for the regular people in the United States to really understand what is happening and the type of terrorism their government not only supports, but basically are a part of.
I think the mainstream press, or the legacy press as they call it, if they were doing their job, if they were being the watch person of the government like they're supposed to be, and were informing the people every day of this type of persecution against Christians in the Holy Land, I do think that people would they would be shocked and they would be moved to action. But instead, these things are covered up. Instead, the mainstream press has, glorified this HTS. Again, a rebranded Al Qaeda. These are the people we were told were terrorists. These are the people we were told flew planes into the World Trade Center on 9/11, and somehow now they're heroes. It's incredible. This is 1984, right? This is Orwellian.
Yeah.
And unless the journalism is reclaimed by true journalists, I'm afraid that the people won't truly understand what's happening in their name and with their tax dollars.
Right. Well, Daniel, what about, I mean, we have seen over the last 14, 15 months since this latest genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, we have seen a greater awareness, especially with the younger people, younger generations, because of social media. Do you feel that that group is more aware overall of the role that Washington plays in these terrorist acts, not only in Syria, but in Palestine and really all over the world?
I think it varies by region and by country. I think you're right that there is a lot of awakening when it comes to Palestine and Gaza in particular. I think with Syria, it's a different case. I think the vilification of Assad over many, many years, just like the vilification of Gaddafi in Libya over many, many years, did its trick. I think many people have been fooled by what has happened. Again, even people that support Palestine.
Right.
Even though Syria was supporting Palestine, right? Even though now, with the victory of Al Qaeda in Syria, the struggle of the Palestinian people has been made much more difficult. Again, people have been groomed into thinking that somehow this is a popular revolution. Again, when it's not, it's far from it. It's a foreign-backed terrorist operation, and in a significant number, of course, of the fighters for HTS aren't even Syrian, right? This is a regime change operation from the outside in, and but again, people have been so, I don't want to use the term brainwashed, which is an overused term, but they've been so misinformed and disinformed over years that this is a tough nut to crack. It's more difficult, it seems, than the Palestinian issue to make people understand.
Right, right. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us out of Pittsburgh. That's Daniel Kovalik, author and human rights lawyer.